Luca Nation, welcome back. Welcome back to the Fractional Report before opening bell, brought to you by Collectable, episode 672 of Lucas Tigers and Bronzo My. And I hope to start things off a little bit differently today, Cage, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
First, I want to ask, how are you doing, man? What's new? How's life?
Life is life, man. It's a Sunday. It's lots of fun stuff going on. It was Mother's Day. The kids made breakfast for mom. Mom got some gifts, and got to spend some time with the fam today. Watch some sports. The Yankees had a doubleheader. The second game's on now. They just went down 4-2 as we're recording this. We'll see if they come back. Gleyber Torres is alive, so maybe we'll mention that later. Because he's got some cards on. Remember, he's got the card on Collectable that's been beaten to shreds. But all of a sudden, he's actually not doing so bad on offense.
He's playing okay.
Yeah, he's playing. Okay.
He's overshadowed by your 2 6'7" just mashers.
Well, I mean, he had a great week, and in game one today, it was 1-1, bottom of the ninth. He came up and hit a walk-off home run. So, and he's done that a couple times now recently. So it's nice to see him get his swing back. In the second game today, he put one against the wall left field. The Texas outfielder jumped up against the wall to get it. So he's definitely got his power stroke back. He's got some timely hits coming. But anyway, watch some basketball. Just good Sunday.
Cage. So, Luca Nation, we jump on here every single week. We try to give you kind of an overview of what's going on in the world of cards, high-end cards, and also markets on fractional sites like Collectable. But despite like the micro movements of, Hakeem or Wilt Chamberlain jersey, game-worn jerseys up this week, or, Derek Jeter's card is up this week, there's a more macro view of things, right? When the market moves in certain directions, when it moves in certain ways, it has a macro effect. So before we jump into any of the data, what's interesting about Cage, and I've gotten the pleasure to know you 2 years, Cage. Can you believe it? He's a jokester, but a lot of your predictions, we kind of do this like kind of quarterly report, what's going on in the hobby, what are you seeing in the world, right? Of investing, collecting. You're not a one-trick pony. Whether it was vintage cards, you understood that game, you play that game. Graded cards, you understand that. NFTs, digital collectibles, stocks, you have a incredible talent for not only just going wide in the deep in the world of collectibles and investments, also going deep and understanding it. So I wanted to add some value to our community and see if you had, a 5-minute, 10-minute, breakdown of what you think the markets are doing. What are you seeing? We get people in our Discord, they feel squeezed. The ways of making money with grading has become very difficult. So that game is out. Just this week, Bitcoin and crypto is getting cut to the bone. We have that. So it's down 30-40%. I think just this week it's went from 48 to 36. Cards are taking a beating. What are you seeing? Is there something that, sticks out? You think we see this trend for the next 3 to 6 months, next 2 years? What's amazing about Cage, I'll tell you guys a quick story and pass it. I always feel like you're ahead of the curve. I always feel like you don't give yourself enough credit for the moves you make. And the people that have been with us from day one on our show, they know that this is true. You were early on Top Shot before others were. Before, the whole, April, May, you were on it in January, with one rookie card, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice again. And here you are buying a house, or at least looking at houses.
looking at real estate now. Investment properties.
And think about that, guys, right? Sometimes, they say, do as judge as I do, not as I say. I think I butchered that, right? But watch how somebody moves. And I always think you move very intuitively. You have a great pulse on what's going on.
Well, I mean, listen, the overall macro that you're talking about, right? I mean, inflation, we've all been talking about inflation, but what does it actually mean, right? And what does it mean for, the cost of goods? What does it mean for markets? We've had a bunch of episodes with the whole flight to quality, but here's the most significant thing, the lending, right? Lending is going to get really, really weird, right? We had CardFi, InvestiCard, Eddie on talk about like card lending and different rates. And, his rates, which were, 13-15% sounded, crazy when at the time, or I mean, look, it doesn't sound crazy. You understand, it sounds high when you compare it to, at the time, what was a 2.8, 3.2% mortgage rate. And lending was what lending was, right? But all of a sudden, over the last 30 days, mortgage rates have gone up over a point, closer to 2. And the last I looked, a 30-year mortgage was like 5.7%, which is just, it's nuts, because what winds up happening with that is, it's more expensive to borrow money. And, a 30-year mortgage on a $500,000 house becomes almost twice as much money over time when you're paying that interest, right? The monthly payment is more, the interest is more in the beginning. It's a huge difference. And, what we've seen is the price of everything go up. But when the price of, when interest rates go up, usually housing prices come down, because you can't just, put 20% down and borrow, because when you borrow that 80%, that $400,000 is now being 6% interest. When it was 3% interest, $400,000 was $12,000 a year, in just interest. Now it's $24,000 in interest a year. It's another $1,000 a month just on the rate. The house didn't change, but how much you're paying in interest has doubled. I mean, it's pretty nuts.
Is it fair to say that most people owe monthly payments and they don't own their house outright?
Well, the bank owns the house until you own it, right? You could have equity in it.
What percentage of people do you think that are in the hobby own their house outright versus have monthly payments on it?
Oh, I mean, the hobby, I think what we're talking about in houses, or are you talking about like house as in what they own in their hobby assets?
Houses specifically, because here's what I'm seeing.
Most people don't. I mean, look, I don't own my house outright yet.
Most people don't own their house. Most people have monthly payment for cars. Now you have cost of living has gone up. I mean, if you look at gas prices, they're like $5-6, right? So it's $100, $150 to fill up a tank. Mm-hmm. So that squeezes people when it comes to buying consumer goods like cards.
Yep.
And I'm curious, do you see that continuing through the end of the year and into 2023? Do you think that something might change between now and then? Because truthfully, a lot of what fueled the market was, yes, there was demand, people came in, but it was also people at home watching sports, getting $1,200 in their checking account. Cost of living was so super low, so they had to deviate and put money somewhere. And cards was where they put it. Breaks, cards, grading, speculating. Now it's the complete opposite.
Yeah, I mean, listen, cards. What's funny about it is, prior to the last couple of years, cards were never looked at as a quick flip, huge percent gain type of investment play, right? For whatever reason. And you can say the same thing about so many things. We talked about stocks, right? I gave that Shopify comparison. You can talk about crypto. You can talk about digital assets. You talk about comics. You talk about watches. Rolexes. If you invest in Rolex, the multiple on that is crazy. If you talk about almost any luxury goods, and I think it's because people were looking for alternate asset classes. People were looking for places to put their money. And I got to tell you, the 20X, 10X, 5X, even 2X, type of things that we're seeing with cards over the last couple of years was just something that didn't exist. Sure, card values went up, right? But it wasn't I expected, if I deploy $10,000 in cards in January, by March, I'm going to have $20,000 in value. No, I mean, just think about that for a second. We've said this on our show a million times, right? You can't expect that. You can't expect that liquidity, immediately. You can't expect that multiple. And the problem is that it happened. You know what I mean? I mean, think about it, right? A couple years ago, we're not talking that long ago, a couple years ago, I was selling Luka PSA 10 Prism rookies for $65. It didn't take that long for it to go to 2,000. You know what I mean? And it's still higher than that 65, right? But it's not 2,000 anymore. And that's the crazy thing. And people think, and listen, it's not just cards, right? There's a reset that's happening. And you listen to our Gary Vee episode, he talked about that also. The cycle, right? That super cycle, right? That, it comes in, there's price discovery, everybody's making money, so everybody's dapping each other up, right? And everybody's going, yeah, this is great. It's euphoria. Then big money comes in, right? Big money comes in, and now they're chasing, revenue. They're chasing their returns. And the money is not that same multiple. And a lot of things happen. One, the community starts to attack each other, right? And two, the people who are just in it for that crazy multiple, that gamble, that high risk, high reward, they'll go somewhere else and try to find it somewhere else. And, people will say that was NFTs for a little while. People will say that's, whatever else is going to be next, whatever else the people are going to move into, memorabilia, type 1 photos, whatever the heck it's that people are going to be trying to jump into. We can't really fix that, right? You can't really fix the people, entering, exiting the hobby, the multiples, the price discovery, the cycle. What we can fix is how we deal with one another while that's going on. Right. That's one of the things we can't fix. We could talk about that. I don't want to get too far off the market thing and get into more of like, human behavior, but what I found in the hobby is people are very quick to get out there and join a mob if they're holding pitchforks and torches, and not so quick to join a mob if they're holding signs that say, all right, I'm cheering for you. I'm holding a sign that says I can succeed and you can succeed at the same time. People want to just tear stuff down instead of helping everybody else build stuff up. I've been guilty of it myself. So trying to do a better job myself as a hobby participant, trying to keep people in, trying to keep money in. But yeah, I mean, that's a conversation, I guess, for another day. And guys, what I would implore you to do here is take a second, rewind what I just said, 2 minutes, and you'll hear me talking about this cycle, this euphoria, this community that's being built of everybody dapping each other up. We're all making money, and then money comes in, and the returns aren't there, and people are chasing the dollar, and all of a sudden the community starts infighting the whole deal. And forget that I was talking about cards for a second, and apply it to any other community investment that you were in, whether it's NFTs, from the bottom ones to Bored Apes, which are experiencing it right now for the first time. I predicted that. Andrew, he and I, we talk a lot. So
fuck Andrew. Go to Crypto Casuals in January, which was our other YouTube channel. It literally, Cage talks about this, I think 3 episodes in a row. He's like, yeah, it's because Cage and I used to get into arguments of collector versus an investor. And sometimes, wake up in the morning, I'm like, don't you just want to be a collector, Cage? I would always say. And he got so mad at me. Like, what do you even mean? How can I collect NFTs? They've had 1 year of a track record. What would you collect? Which one's the blue chip? Stop saying
what's the blue chip? Yeah, stop saying blue chip. What's a blue chip?
And he's like, yeah, well, when everything is good, everyone's dapping each other up. They love each other, but they haven't faced the correction. And I'll flip it. I think the hobby actually does better than it gives itself credit. There's been a lot of industries that have collapsed.
Yep.
Crazy Bones, Beanie Babies. Now, there wasn't the internet, but the hobby stood the test of time. Yeah, it's weird and quirky. Yeah. And they do hold each other accountable. But at the end of the day, there are people who just truly love cards and they truly love sports. And that foundation is like, that's going nowhere.
Well, what's funny about it is, I mean, I love those collectors, and I love the people who love the cars and love the sports. But the people who are right now saying, be a collector, be a collector, be a collector, they're also the people who were here before. They weren't so happy to be collectors for like 2 decades. And they're the ones who were the Bored Apes. They were the ones who got in. They were in the right cards. They were in, for whatever reason, whether they became the right cards or they were always the right cards. They were the ones that were holding Jordans and LeBrons and Tom Brady's. And they're the ones that can weather a downstorm the most, like the Bored Apes can, right? Because they made $1 million on a $250 investment, right? So the collectors, they have, I would say it's almost like a moral responsibility. And I've seen them go 2 ways. The way I would tell them to go, the way I would go myself, is to lead by example and say, hey guys, because I've been here for a while, I've experienced this. And sure, I got lucky. Sure, I've made some good calls, but I've weathered downturns, and here's how I did it. Here's the cards that I bought. Here's what I sold. Here's what I saw in the lead up to a downturn that allowed me to protect myself and pivot my portfolio to weather that storm. Instead of going the other way, which is, well, these flippers shouldn't have been here anyway. It should just be us collectors. It should just be us collecting. That's not how it grows.
But we've talked about this. And, Cage, remember I brought up to you the 4 types of luck?
Yeah.
Remember we talked about this? I actually think the group that you just talked about, they did a really good job of doing the 4th type of luck. So if you guys don't know, there's blind luck. Like you buy a lottery ticket, you get lucky. Okay? There's luck from when you just that kid after college, he just went to every networking event, he went to 150 interviews and he got the best job, or she got the best job. That's luck from motion. Then there's luck from preparation and luck that is unique to you. The last type of luck is creating a personal brand, creating a product. So when an industry explodes, well, you created something that's so unique that people have to come to you. So I actually do think that group that you're talking about, they've built businesses, they've created content.
I'm talking about luck number 3. I'm talking about the people who prepared. I think they got lucky through that preparation. The people who, I think it's more luck than anything else. They happen to live in Boston and collect Tom Brady. They happen to be a Michael Jordan fan and collect Tom Brady. But they stayed with it. They didn't sell. Like, I was a UFC guy before anybody collected UFC. And I had, probably a multi-million-dollar UFC collection and sold it all. So even though I was lucky there, I wasn't smart enough to see the writing on the wall there, right? But people got to learn from that. People got to talk about their L's, not just their W's, right? So here I am saying, oh, these people all got lucky. They happen to live in Boston when Tom Brady was winning all these Super Bowls. Well, they didn't sell for $10,000. They held the cards. You know what I mean? So there's something to be said for that. I can't just poo-poo it and call it luck. But I guess where I'm going to go with it, man, is let's help our listeners be those people who are lucky by preparation. And I think this show is a perfect example of that, right? So let's jump into the numbers. Let's jump into the data. Let's jump into this, because anybody listening to this, they're going to have a jump on trading for the week. They're going to be the ones who are most prepared. There's data out there, guys, and this is a perfect example. And just before we do that, let me say this. One little nugget. The way to weather the storm, the way to weather markets is, and I talked about this on one of our episodes, right? A smart rich man once said, the key to being rich, side by side. Here's my graph of my money over 5 days. And it goes up and down and up and down. And here's my graph of money over 5 years. And it's basically a slow and steady grind upwards. And you don't see those ups and downs, right? But if you look at it every day, and you're like, oh my God, it's up. Oh my God, it's down. Look at the. But if you just pan out over time with a little patience and the right stuff, it just goes up. Fractional, it gives you access to like the quality. We talk about the blue chips. We talk about in a sector that has blue chips. Like no one will ever argue, that there aren't blue chips in this, because it's a century and a half old, asset class. So it's a little different than NFTs and crypto and that kind of stuff. And there are cards on here that money will and should gravitate to. And you have an opportunity, since you're already, listening, to kind of hear some of those things. It might not be the basket of silver, Ja, Luka, Zion, and Trey. You know what I mean? That I've been basically panning since like last August, and then finally.
So we'll start with that.
Out, but go ahead, shoot.
Guys. So why I brought all that up is, and we understand Collectable is a pretty illiquid marketplace right now. But if you go and rewind the last 15 minutes back to the luck preparation, if you could do damage in a marketplace like this, liquidity will come, more actors will come, more players will come. And I think that will be only to your advantage, because you'll know how the market works. So keep that in mind. But the market was down about 4% overall over the week. Cards were down 4%, memorabilia 5%, to around 4.22. So basketball is down 4%. Baseball is actually relatively flat. We could talk a little bit about baseball. It's I think baseball shot itself in the foot with the lockout. I don't know if you've seen data. Every time there's been a lockout, attendance is down 20% that season, and it takes quite some time to get that back up. So something to keep in mind.
People don't like it. People don't
like it.
It's
distracting. They have options. They'll just go watch F1.
Well, there was only a little bit of a delay, right? But that delay is enough. It's enough to tell people, okay, well, opening day didn't happen this year, and you know what? The world's still turning, and I'm still alive, and maybe I didn't miss as much as I thought I would miss it. And it's reasonable for people to kind of punish the sport for that. I think it's reasonable.
I love it. Hockey actually up 3.35%. Hockey's an interesting market that there are opportunities. Soccer's down 4%, boxing down 3%, wrestling down 14%, and tennis down 21%. The three biggest gainers: Chris Bosh game worn sneakers up 50%, which I can't make any sense of. The Willie Mays 1956 Topps Grayback PSA 9 up 37 after being down 22, and then your boy Michael Porter Jr. So
Can
where
I
do you
jump in
want to?
right now? Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Well, let's start with that, right? Because guys, we want to give you some actionable, data here. We want to give you something to act on, as the bell tolls here on Monday morning, and you're getting this before the opening bell. Let's look a little bit deeper at that maze that was up, the 1956 PSA 9 Grayback. This is something that Andrew and I,
Okay.
in various episodes at different times, have harped on. With a market that's not as liquid as several others, you see overreactions, right? You're able to spot things where people are looking for liquidity. They're exiting. One person with a bunch of stuff can trigger an actual real drop of big percentage. And sometimes it causes an overcorrection in an asset. So if you're able to pull that one up, sure, the 56 Maze PSA 9 Grayback was up 37.3%. But if you pull the chart up, pull up a 1 month chart, right? You'll see that this card was one of the big down cards last week, right? Look at that drop and drop. So a 1 month chart shows, sure, it's up 37.3%, but last week it was down 22.4%. So someone smart enough would say, hey, look at the maze. It's down 22%, probably somebody who left. I'm going to go in and buy this. And that's what happened. And someone was able to buy the shares cheap on this card. So what can we do with that, right? What can we do? It's not like there's going to be another PSA 9 Willie Mays on Collectable that had a drop of 30% 1 week over week. Oh, wait a second, but there is. Just wait, there's more. So do me a favor and pull up the 1960 Willie Mays PSA 9. So of course it's not 1956. It's a later one. But look, Willie Mays' rookie was 51. 56 is not his rookie either. 60 is not his rookie. Sure, you'd rather have the earlier one, but let's take a look at this one. The 1960 PSA 9. Wouldn't it be amazing? Not the 51 rookie, the 1960 PSA 9, right?
Cool.
Wouldn't it be amazing if just like the 56, this one was down 22 or 30? Oh, what do you know? Look at that chart. It's down from 325 a share to 226 a share. Can you believe this? It's down to a market cap of 20,600-ish, down about 30% from last week. Exactly the same scenario that was presented in the 56 Grayback PSA 9. Obviously, Willie Mays didn't do anything this week except have a birthday, by the way. It was his birthday this week. So I don't think cards go down just because somebody had a birthday. But he had a birthday. He was in the news for that, right? A lot of people looking at the over-the-shoulder catch, you name it, was Willie Mays' birthday. Happy birthday, Willie Mays. But here you are. Learn from last week. Last week, the Mays 1956 was down 22.5%. It follows that week by being up 37%. This week, 1960 PSA 9 Mays is down 30%. Down very close to its IPO. This thing IPO'd at $2 a share, 9,125 shares, a total market cap of $18,250. It's just hovering about 10% higher than that now at $2.26 a share, down from $3.25 last week. Look at that chart. Drop, right? So this is one where somebody who held this obviously just wanted to get some liquidity and pulled their shares out of this. It's not like, Willie Mays had a bad week on the field, right? So I can't really say that that's what it is, unlike some of the other stuff that we're going to talk about later. But this was one that just kind of really stood out to me as chart history repeating itself. And we don't have to go back too far. I got another one of these. I'm going to have you go back and look at March 4th. This one was, look at the last 2 weeks. It's the same guy. It's the same grade.
What is it about for most players and most cards, even iconic players, it's rookie year or some kind of insert or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because what I'm seeing is it's not that no one cares about the rookie card of Willie Mays or Mickey Mantle, but actually the market kind of likes all of their cards at a high
Correct.
grade.
In high grade. There are a
Is
lot of people who collect that stuff. It's almost like there are gold collectors now. There's almost like, hey, people buy LeBron cards.
Is that because there's no inserts of those guys and people want secondary cards?
Well, so, people do verticals. It's almost like wine. Sure, you'd rather have the Screaming Eagle from 1992, which was the first year of the vintage, right? But I'll take any year of the vertical. But you don't. It's 1992 is the first year. Listen, large formats of that stuff.
It's
Screaming
good
Eagle. You never heard of Screaming Eagle? It's a California cab out of Rutherford. Real nice stuff.
You're speaking my language.
Real nice stuff. But you're talking about thousands upon thousands of dollars. The 92 is a crazy year. Some other vintages are nice too. 97's a nice vintage. But it depends on the weather.
That's kind of cool. Like, I wonder if you ever had the decision, like, I have a Patrick Mahomes, rare card. Do I eat it or do I keep it? Like with wine, you're like, do I open it?
I mean, listen, I used to eat the gum
Ian,
from old, like 30-year-old. He'll eat cards.
Ian eats all his cheap wines.
Yeah, he either rips or eats the Houston Astro cards because he says they're cheaters. But point here is, I understand what you're trying to say. There are not inserts. There are not in-pack autos. For Mantle and Mays, there are a lot of cards because they played for a long time. I mean, right. Mantle's run from 51 to 69. Mays runs from 51 into the 70s. I mean, he's got cards where he played for the Mets in the 70s. You know what I mean? So but people like making it's like a set. Right? People like collecting the set of Willie Mays cards, the set of Mickey Mantle cards. We talked about it with the 1954 Red Heart Mantle. Remember on our show for PWCC, that there was no 54 Topps Mantle, so the 54 Red Heart, 54 Bowman, they kind of come in when people are trying to build a vertical,
So for you, and this is super off the top of my head, and you guys out there don't. It's just like a fun little exercise. Would you rather have like a high grade Mickey Mantle 1953, 54 in like an 8 or 9? Or would you rather have his rookie 51 Bowman or 52 Topps in a 4 or 5?
If you're asking me, I take a 9 in 53 any day. That's an expensive card. There's not a lot of high grade. I take 53 9. Like I have a 5 for 1952 Topps. I would trade that for a 53 9. 100%.
Okay. Cool. 100%. Okay, let's keep going. What other data you got for me?
They're rare in high grades. Okay, so let's just roll with that and go to Mickey Mantle. The Mickey Mantle 1968 PSA 9 basket, right? So this is one of his last cards. And what you're looking at here on Collectable is 1968 PSA 9 basket. So take a look when you pull it up, right? I am 99% sure that there's 2 of them. This IPO'd at 10 with 3,635 shares. So you're talking about $36,350. It immediately traded down in secondary. It has not hit
what card are you looking at, Cage?
It's the basket of 1968 PSA 9 Mickey Mantles.
1968 right here.
68. Gotcha. Yep, PSA 9. You got it. You found it. So it's 2 of them, right? 2 PSA 9s.
Yep.
There you go. So what I'm looking at here is 2 cards that obviously they had them at 18,000 at the IPO. This is a bunch of things that I want to talk about here. 1, awesome card. 2, awesome set. Him. The 68 set. It's Nolan Ryan's rookie. You're talking about coming in. The old guard into the new, right? Another generation. This is him winding down his career. That said, last week $7.89 per share. This week $6.40. So it's basically down a third. You're talking about a card that was it's a basket here. They were 18,000 each. You're looking at closer to 10,000 each now. 20,000 for 2 of them. But here's where the chart gets fun. 1, it's down about 20%, right? So that's 1 nice and easy. And again, just like Mays, Mantle didn't do anything this week to cause a 20% drop in his value. So this is one to look at. But more importantly, if you look at the trading on this one and you go back on it, right? This is a card that has previously, from January into March, had a drop from January into March, and it hit a bottom. Do you know what the bottom was? $6.40 per share, exactly on March 4th. It fell from the 7s to $6.40 per share. $6.40 seems like the support line, like somebody in there saying, all right, we've dropped low enough. These cards shouldn't fall below about 10 grand each. And immediately, the last time on March 4th closing, it hit $6.40. The very following week, it was up to $7.99. So it was up 25%.
For people like me that like support, like I own 10 shares of this card. I really like this card. I think it should be valued at X. It drops below, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to double dollar cost average at this price. I'm going to get 20 shares.
But $6.40 on this particular card is its low ever in trading. IPO to 10, bounced around for months in the 8s, 9s, got up over 10, stayed in the 9s, stayed in the 8s, 7s. When it hit 6.4 on March 4th, it immediately bounced back up 6.4, didn't crack below 6.4, right? It bounced back up to 7.9, stayed at 8.88, 7.9 until this past week. It went from $7.89 a share down to 6.4 again, right? So if what happened last time holds again, you're basically looking at support on what's what most people would consider a blue chip player, blue chip asset, 2 PSA 9s of Mickey Mantle. Sure, later in his career. I'm looking at the chart more on this one, right? Not only do we have some support, but it's also something that week over week's down 20%, sort of like the Maze was. So two cards that I'm glad we talked about baseball. I'm glad we talked about the Maze that was up, because then we can lead into this. But I'm glad we started off the way we started off, with what do I see? What I see is people are going to realize that there is not as much of that crazy up and down in the overall markets of these guys. The Maze, the Mantle, the basketball greats, the Wilt Chamberlains and the Bill Russells, right? So I'm not saying everybody should just go sell all their John Morants right now and buy Willie Mays, but you should have a little bit of this in your portfolio, because it's nice to balance out that crazy fluctuation with something that's just a little more steady.
So I need to ask you, and I need you to give me your God-honest opinion. Your God-honest opinion. Forget what you own. Forget your portfolio. Forget your misses, your wins.
Yep.
So we have a Tim Duncan PMG green sitting at 520,000.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see lasting power, and do you think the crazy run up on PMG overall lasts, or do you think we see a correction?
So PMG greens is only 10 in basketball. There's 15 in football. So from just overall markets, it doesn't take much to move that. Doesn't take much to move something that has that small of a supply. It also doesn't take much to have support, right? So that on PMG greens, it almost doesn't matter who it is. There are enough people collecting those, trying to build the complete sets of those, that the prices are going to be supported, right? That said, with the overall market down a bit, I'm not saying the $300,000 buyout offer that came in that was half of what it was trading at is something people should be accepting or looking at or regretting not taking, but it doesn't look as crazy now that card is kind of sitting where it's sitting. Tim Duncan's not he's not somebody that many people collect outside of, people who live in San Antonio, right? So that's part of it.
I would say more people collect Penny than Tim Duncan.
Penny?
And
sure.
Duncan is infinitely more accomplished than Penny. It's interesting how that works. That was one of the lessons I had to learn in the hobby.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, forget what I own, what I don't own. I would be foolish to bet against PMG greens, right? Because you already know that there are people holding these that have no need to sell them ever. And you're talking about people who are multi-millionaires, who this is the epitome, the pinnacle of collecting for them. And when you have 10 and you can name 2, 3, 4, or 5 people that just won't sell these cards at any price, they become cards that I would never say, oh, wow, that card's coming down. So PMG green, basketball. The football, what's interesting, football's not cheap, but the football doesn't sell like the basketball does. Lets you know kind of, how, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but how markets can be impacted, by just a few people who will buy and hold PMG green. That Duncan, it hasn't really moved, right? It hasn't moved since the crazy move up, right? It's basically been flat.
It feels, with the exception of Mahomes, the average age for like a football collector is 40 and up. The average age for a basketball collector, high-end basketball collector, is like 40 and down. And I think PMGs are a relatively new phenomenon. 95, 96?
So PMGs are for people who are in their late 30s.
Yes.
Who collected basketball, who were like basketball collectors in the 90s.
Correct.
Right? People people who are late 30s, maybe early 40s, people who are in the prime earning potential, people who this was something they knew about, but was just something they heard about. Like, I'm never going to see one of these, or maybe I pulled one, or saw a friend pull one. Or
Once again, you didn't get lucky because you're an '80s collector. '80s collector collected baseball and
actually, I missed
rookies.
PMGs by a couple of years. My biggest collecting, money wise, when I actually had money to spend, was 92, 93 Shaq. So I have more Shaq. Yeah, I mean, and nobody respects the big man. I know it from my own life. No, the big man gets no respect. To get no respect. But I mean, I got more 92. I got more Shaq than you know what to do with. And what's I mean, you want to talk about timing? It really is, right? 92, 93, 94. I collected the New England Patriots quarterback. I have more Drew Bledsoe cards than anybody in the whole wide world. If I collected
but you got
later, I'd have more Brady.
But if we stretch out that collecting, what are you? You're 30 years into collecting. Is that fair to say?
More, probably, yeah.
Well, no, 30 years. If we give you a 60-year, it seems like each cycle you do get better. You collected junk wax.
Works.
2000s, okay, you did a little bit in these 2010 decade. You really did some damage. Just wait till 2040, man. You're 2030. You're gonna crush it.
If Chick-fil-A doesn't do me in, I'm gonna make some money. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
You're eating healthy.
I am.
By the way,
I am. I'm eating healthy. I am. I'm down.
All right,
Significant amount of weight. We'll
what
stuck out to me? Let's swing the pendulum the other way, right? Because the Mantle and the Maze, and guys, note the theme. I didn't know where Andrew was going in the beginning of this about the overall macro picture, asking me where I would tell people to put my money and where I'm putting my own, right? But note the theme. I had my cards all picked out, my research already done. I had it all written up here before I knew Andrew was going to go all macro on me, right? And of course, where am I going? The Maze and the Mantle, I think there's an overreaction. I think people are going to be, overreaction. There's, for some reason, somebody sold. There's nothing to react to. I don't want to call it an overreaction. It's not like they lost, they got eliminated from the playoffs. But the other side of the equation is, do me a favor, man, and pull up the Durant Refractor PSA 10. His Topps Chrome rookie, right? So this particular card is down from 19 a share to 17. It's got 1,250 shares, so market cap of 21,250. We've talked about this card. It fluctuates in that 16 to 25, 26 range. You saw a recent sale in that liquid auction, some alt in the 16 range. People were hanging on to this Durant. You saw this past week a 19 to 17 drop. That's like a 10, 11% drop of this card. I would expect to see that potentially continue. You've got card ladder data on there. Recent sales are in the teens, right?
Something to take notice is that it IPO'd at 12.5.
Yep.
It's currently at 21.
21,250. Yep.
Almost 100%. Let's call it 90% increase. That means
for the people who IPO'd
sitting on this. Yeah, for the people who IPO'd. For the people sitting on this, I think that many of them were expecting a much more further run in the playoffs from the Nets and Durant than they got, and I expect to sell off on this too.
Yep. So that's the deal. And listen, the silver basket with the two Jaws, the two Zions, the two Lukas, the two Trays, that's also down, and it's down big. I'm surprised it stayed up as long as it did. It had a bad week, and
that's what she said.
What's weird is, no, she doesn't. I have medicine for that. So what's weird about it is that, Luka and Ja are still playing and playing well. Ja's having a great postseason after a great season. Luka, 2-2 now, tied it up.
Incredible.
So you would think that these guys, I said Luka, but anyway, it is what it is. I still think the Suns win, but that's the thing. Like, I don't think either of those teams are winning the championship. I don't think Dallas or Memphis are winning. So this one here, it's down big this week, but you can very easily see comps on these cards, and the comps are still lower than what this basket of silver rookies is trading for. These cards, that Luka, especially the Zion, they're going to be kind of like poster children for this, this little wave here. But you could see it went up, and it had a heck of a a little exit here in this last week, and I don't think we have seen the the full extent of that.
Totally
On the
agree.
flip side, if you pull up the Luca Blue, right, the Luca PSA 10 Blue, right, that's another one, right? So that's modern, right? So that's an interesting one where Luca's Blue Prism seen losses 3 straight weeks. You can see it. See the end of that chart there. The last month basically is a down, down, down. 3 straight weeks of losses on the Luca Blue PSA 10. But now the market cap is down to 43,750. I don't know if there's any recent shares on this, any recent comps, but I know when we were talking about this in
March
season,
20th
there was a
sold for 50.
54. Yeah, so March 20th, 50, right? There was a recent 54, a recent 78. A bunch. See, look, 54, 56, 78. You can see them. Obviously, I think I'd be careful with this because Luka may exit the playoffs soon. He's 2-2 against the Suns, so who knows? I mean, Dallas did win their first playoff series since 2011 when Dirk took them all away. But this is a card where I know it's modern. I know it's, oh, wow, stay away from the modern. Go with Mantle and Mays. This is a numbered card, right? It's a color match, team color match, blue, numbered to 199. It's PSA 10. It's unimprovable. It's Prism. It's a bunch of stuff. And, this is one where it has been beaten up. And sure, if they get eliminated from the playoffs this week, maybe it gets beaten up a little more. But it's hovering in that territory now where this is one that, based on recent comps, you talk about a comp from a couple weeks ago, it's now hovering in territory where it, one, it might be a bargain, but two, more importantly, somebody might take this off the market. Somebody paid $54,000 for it on March 20th. This one's now at 43 and change. That's a nice, 20% premium from where we are. So somebody comes in and makes an offer on it. This is one that could get taken off the platform.
I believe he's so good, man. It's incredible his poise under pressure. Like watching him, then watching Trey, then watching Ja in the playoffs. I think it's obvious to see he's head and shoulders above the other two guys in controlling a game for their age. Obviously, Ja has more athleticism, but like the way Luka, it's incredible. But I think we've kind of seen the floor for Luka, and I think we actually kind of overcorrected. How markets are typically efficient, but card markets way less efficient. I think we've overcorrected. If Luka Silvers were overpriced at $9,000, I think they're actually a little bit too cheap at $2,000 a pop. And I think his parallels like this one, I think it's a little bit cheap for what he has. An incredible collector base. He has a collector base, I think, that's way different than Ja and Trey as well, where they love this guy. He's so marketable, man. He's got it. He's going to be in the league for a while. Dallas has a huge fan base. Luka's interesting, man. Luka's going to be the hobby darling for a very, very long time. And I don't think it matters that he doesn't win a championship because I don't think the hobby expects him to win a championship.
Right. Not this year, definitely. But it's funny. People are like, who's going to be his number 2? And Jalen Brunson is playing some real good ball. If you add a big to that lineup, a defensive big with him and Brunson, it's interesting.
I think having a number 2 that's marketable takes away from your marketability. So I think it's great that it's Jalen Brunson, Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith. Like 100%. I think that helps his marketability in a lot of ways.
Well, think about it. Think if they put he's winding down, but think if they put like a Montrezl Harrell or a Draymond Green type of player with him. Draymond's not taking away from anyone's spotlight, but think about what that would do, right? Now all of a sudden you're winning championships and you're still the guy. Like that's the kind of player you're looking for, for Luke. Obviously, Draymond's.
What's interesting about NBA series? It's the only time in the year like you really get to play the same team 4 to 7 times. It becomes more chess than talent, right? And what I saw today was they figured the Suns out.
Yep.
And I'm sitting here thinking like, all right, let's say the Mavs get through this series. I don't know what happens in the Warriors series, right? If they just beat the best team in the league with this very clunky but interesting offense that's under control, can they not make it?
Clunky but interesting. I mean, listen, let's not overemphasize what's going on here. The Suns put a beating on them in the first 2 games. The refs were the best player on the Mavericks today. You know, you can't have
19
Chris Paul
fouls in the first quarter.
Chris
19
Paul
or
had
14.
5 fouls with like 3 minutes into the second half, basically. So, I mean, you know, they beat him without Chris Paul. The Suns were not shooting well. Booker, what's weird is this is the exact type of game that if Booker is the guy everyone tells me he is, and I tell everyone he's not, right? I'm the one who puts up the ghost story about he disappears in the playoffs. He's a ghost like Pac-Man, right? So this is exactly the game where Devin Booker, will the real Devin Booker please stand up? If Chris Paul is out with 5 fouls, Book's got to be the guy. He's got to be that guy if he's that guy. And I don't think he is.
I think you're right because remember Kobe came into the league, he shot like 5 air balls.
Yeah, but he didn't care. He still put up a 6 shot.
This is the game where just put up 40. Just shoot 40 times. See what happens.
Right.
Because you don't, like we just talked about chess. You don't really know. Like I would have never in my right mind thought building an offense with a overweight, stocky, sort of slow, white, oversized point guard would work that holds the ball for 20 seconds out of the shot.
Are you talking about are you talking about me? What we're bringing to Culture Collision next year?
Luka.
I'm the overweight. Like, oh, okay.
Luka. Dude, I would have never thought that would be a successful offense, but it works. So, Book, take your 30, 40 shots a game.
100%.
See if it works.
Especially in today's game where Crowder was missing his threes and they were leaving him wide open. Sometimes he hits those threes. He was back of the rim clanging every one of those. So, yeah, Booker, if your team's not on, if none of these guys are hitting, Mikal Bridges is not having his game, and Ayton's not doing his thing, take every single shot. Put it on your back, and if you're going to lose, go down losing with your best player taking all the shots. Or go out there and win and be that guy. But he's not. He's not that guy.
And then you could beat the other team in 2 ways, right? You could have volume shooting. So it's in – refs were terrible.
The refs were terrible.
You know what's interesting about Luka? Luka dominated that game, but shot terribly. And that's what's interesting.
Had an air ball himself, but kept shooting.
And I don't know another player that could do that. So it's fascinating just if we're talking about the player himself.
Luka, I have a friend who, like, I used to talk about Luka, and he's like, oh, I got to watch this guy play. He's a Celtics fan. And he watched the game, and he's like, wow, this guy's slow, and he's not really doing anything. And what's going on? And I said to him, I go, did you see him win? And he's like, yeah, I saw him win, but, you know, he wasn't anything. He's nothing special. I didn't see one grid highlight reel, nothing I would, like, clip and post anywhere and hold it. I go, now look at his stats. He's like, he had a 32-point triple-double. And I'm like, yeah, that's basically his stat line every game. You know what I mean? Obviously, that he's a little under that. But, yeah, I mean, holy cow, he had 32, 12, and 10. I didn't see any of that. But it happens, right? He fills the stat sheet. He plays a little bit of defense. I mean, his defense looked terrible in game 1. But you're shoring that up a little bit. Remember we talked about how it's up to Jason Kidd to find a way to game plan, right? We talked about that after game 2. And they have. The game plan is bribe the refs. What else you got on the collectible front? What else you got on from a fractional perspective? How about anything coming up? It didn't take long for the 2001 Tom Brady season ticket booklet to get fully funded, including the Brady replacing Bledsoe game, his first start and win game, and his first touchdown pass game. Sad. It's a cool collectible, that whole book. And now with the new Windows, the way that it works, only waiting 30 days, that will be available for trading on June 6th. Filled out with a market cap just under $12,000. Pretty cool item. You just, it's one of those things that here's the only place that you'd probably be able to find one of those things, right? So anything else, anything fun that stood out for you in, the market?
So early access. This is an interesting one. Michael Jordan icon basket. It's like, it has a market cap of $1 million. It's the Fleer 1986 Fleer PSA 10 BGS 9.5. So that's going to be interesting to see. People are going to do their own math. We could talk a little bit about the Mahomes Flawless. So that card, it's interesting in the hobby that doesn't always have daily news, how people try to find daily news. So that one on this was one of those things that on the surface, I was sure was overpriced. And as time has gone on, and I've spoken to some people behind the scenes and learned more about this asset, spoke with our community, spoke with people who know that market, I learned, in fact, it wasn't the case. And it's just interesting. So if you guys don't know, that was the one that was put up for early access for 1.9 million. And at first you think it's the off season of the NFL. Who's buying Mahomes? Why would you pay 1.9 mil for a Mahomes card? But here's the interesting thing, Cage. Once you start digging, you find out that almost across the board, people believe that that's Mahomes' second best card, right?
Yep.
And you could speak to, a collector, an investor. People believe that's his second best card. It's a shield, flawless. And the National Treasure is sold for 4.3. And then when you start backing into it, you're like, okay, that should probably be a 2.2, $2.1 million card, right? Half the price. It's standard across the board. And it was actually 1.9. But it's funny how that works. Once you gather more information, you learn about it. But on the surface, you're like, that's an insane valuation, right?
Yep. Any
thoughts on it?
No, I mean, listen, I got to tell you, I mean, football cards, it's definitely probably not as low as soccer on my list of knowledge base. I mean, I've learned a lot about it, but those kind of cards, those one-of-ones, the Mahomes stuff, you remember how I was talking before about how it doesn't take much to have crazy pricing on PMG greens? You know what I mean? Mahomes has a rabid fan base, way more than a Tim Duncan would ever have, right? And here we are talking about it's a $500,000-$600,000 PMG green. It's not a rookie. There's 10 of them. This is a rookie, one-of-one, on card for a guy that has a fan base that would blow away Tim Duncan or any of the PMG greens and the whole deal. So it kind of just goes with there are a lot of people who have a lot of money in this hobby. Right, there's a lot of people who've made a lot of money over the last couple of years, and buying those one-of-one Lukas, buying those. I mean, think of how much money people spent on a 10-10 National Treasure Luka out of 99. Right, sure, Gem Mint 10 auto, Gem Mint 10 card. There's not a lot of those, but that thing sold for almost $800,000, and that's out of 99. Right, this is a one-of-one of Mahomes, and I compare him to Luka for a reason. I think they have similar fan bases. They have a similar kind of like rabid lunatics who wear. Imagine what a Luka one-of-one flawless would go for. And I say imagine because it's difficult to price these things, right? Because you know what they're selling for, but they don't sell every week. There is not the same liquidity there that a Luka Silver or Luka Blue or any of these would have, or a Mahomes, rookie base card, or even, the autos out of 10 or 20 or 99 that you see sell and change hands. Collectable, what they did worked. And it's great to put a headline up about how they pricing this at 1.99. Okay, well, how about the post after to say, yeah, they put it up for 1.99 as sort of like a price discovery, right? And if the market says it's not worth that, people aren't going to buy it. I mean, this is one way of figuring out what the market price is.
Is it fair to say that the market could be manipulated in both ways, right? Like sometimes we talk about manipulation as like, oh, they're trying to make the price higher than it should be. But what about people who want to make the price less than it should be?
Yep. Oh, it definitely can. 100%. 100%.
Because in a lot of ways, that card is now, it got pulled by Collectable. And I'm curious, is like left, you remember ceteris paribus in economics?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
All else equal. I'm curious, ceteris paribus, all else equal, without that post, card porn has reach. Whichever way you want to slice it, card porn has reach. I'm curious what people would think of the valuation then if it was explained to them or shared with them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Those are the kind of cards that are very difficult to value. Very difficult. It's a one-of-one. It really matters how much one person is willing to shell out for the card. So one-on-one
and what's happening at that moment, right? Like if you auction that card off right after the 4.3 National Treasure sale, maybe someone reaches and that's a $3 million card.
Yep.
Right. You sell that card right after he loses in the NFL playoffs when people are selling and flooding the market. Maybe it sells for $1 million. So it's tough, right? Anything 100%. Else before we wrap?
No, I mean, listen, Golden Auctions ended last week. The only couple of comps that I want to throw out there, let's just do one. It's not the exact grade, but it's noteworthy. You and I have a conversation about what's the premium between a BGS 8 with a 10 auto and a BGS 8.5 on Collectable. I just want to make sure you guys saw the price action already this week, and maybe a look ahead to next week. The big ticket Brady, the Contenders Championship ticket, the one that's out of 100. There's one on Collectable. The one on Collectibles is BGS 8.5, right? And it started trading this past week at 1.65 million, and it was down to 1.505, down just over 9%, just under 10% down this week. And that's, I believe, in direct response to the Golden auction sale the week before that sold. It was a BGS 8 with a 10 auto. So remember, right? There's a big difference between 8 and 8.5. Just ask me about my Lou Alcindor, right? But the 8 and 8.5, that's a big difference in the half, right? But is it big enough where the 8 for Golden sold for $912,000? Maybe you said there's $1 million card. It doesn't matter, So this is a BGS 8 with a 10 auto. It broke back down under the million, right? It's now $912,000. So there's a $600,000 premium between the 8.5 and the 8. And I don't know whether or not that difference in grade warrants that much of a premium. It definitely didn't look like it warranted a $750,000 premium, and that's why the card came down 150 grand this week already. So just keep an eye on that. If that's a card you're holding, that is a recent comp. Those have come up for sale a lot more recently, which is probably why you're seeing this. This is what happens. Even a card that's numbered out of 100, people want to crap on, the Michael Jordan base because it's not numbered. Oh, buy the Brady. Even that is out of 100. When there is supply that comes out of the woodwork on these things, it happens that, as each one sells, there's another buyer at that 7-figure range that's taken off of the table, and there's less competition, especially for one like this that is an 8, right? So it's just worth noting, right? That's now a significant premium, $600,000 premium to the most recent sale. Not an identical comp, but you have to, if you're holding that card, you have to weigh whether or not you think that the difference between 8 and 8.5 is worth that $600,000 premium. Just one I wanted to mention from a recent comp.
I'm super interested to just kind of watch and see what's going to happen with the LeBron market. Just very interested to see how the next 3, 6, and 12 months. What happens as they bring in Phil Jackson to find him a new coach, which is interesting. If you guys don't know, Phil Jackson and LeBron don't get along very well. So, and Jeannie Buss brought him in to find LeBron a new coach, even though
he Phil also, while he has some success in his career, his most recent endeavor in the NBA was a train wreck, to put it mildly, with the Knicks.
Correct. And he's someone who doesn't believe in three-point shooting, which is what the league is. So that's going to be fascinating. And then, do the Lakers win? Does he perform? What happens with his career? Bronny, not this draft, but 2023, he could come to the league. So in one and a half more years. So very interesting stuff. Next draft is, I think, when Bronny will be eligible. Next, 2023? Look that up. I think it's in not this year, next year. Luca Nation.
Stuff.
Any final words before we wrap?
No, man. I got my final words in. Be careful out there. Markets fluctuate from time to time, but if you're on this platform, you probably understand already that you're not in it for instant liquidity. You're not putting your money in this week and expecting it to come out 10x a month from now. So you understand the fluctuations that happen. We're here to just kind of give you, some insight into some, recent transactions, some cards that look like they might be overpriced, underpriced, what we see in the charts and what we see in the price action, and let you know about some recent comps. And we hope that you're able to, utilize that and, maybe trade with a little more info and a little more knowledge because of what you're hearing from us. We appreciate you listening.